Welcome to Blessed Be the Breakdown, the podcast where I dissect the Handmaid's Tale, explore its themes, and uncover the real-world parallels that make it all the more terrifying. In this episode, we're not just breaking down the second half of Season 5, we're also diving into some fan theories about where the story could go next. We will be starting with the second half of Season 5, covering episodes 6 through 10. If the first half was about vengeance and survival, this half is about the fractures left behind. Trust is tested, alliances crumble, and as the war against Gilead shifts, so do the power dynamics within it. The fallout is inevitable. Let's get into it. So as usual, we will start with some themes we saw in the first half of Season 5 and compare those to the ones we're seeing in the second half of Season 5. So in the first half, we saw the cycle of revenge, Serena's transformation, and the cost of freedom. In the second half, we're going to see more of survival versus morality, motherhood as power, and the fracturing resistance. Episode 6 kicks off with a tense moment. Luke and June are captured and hauled away, but remain in no man's land. In the van, Luke frantically tries to escape, panicking while June remains calm. She's used to this by now. When Luke asks if they are being taken to Gilead, June reassures him that they are not, noting the strong chemical scent of the cleaning products being used. She tries to soothe him. As they attempt to figure out who their captors are, the officer processing them notices June's ear tag and asks her who she is of. In true June fashion, she tells him to fuck off. Now in their holding cells, Luke continues to panic, while June, clearly frustrated, tries to keep him calm. Meanwhile, the Wheelers have set up a gynecologist's office in their home, complete with a doctor. Much to Serena's surprise, it becomes clear that she won't be leaving the house anytime soon, deepening her feelings of entrapment. The Wheelers also seem to be attempting to set her up with the gynecologist, Dr. Landers. Serena has a conversation with Mrs. Wheeler about the setup, and when Serena mentions she may not remarry, Mrs. Wheeler insists that a child needs both a mother and a father. When Serena announces that she's going for a walk, Mrs. Wheeler immediately denies her request, reinforcing that Serena has no autonomy in this household. In this moment, we see just how much Serena's situation is mirroring what June once endured. Stripped of her freedom, trapped in a home where she is expected to serve a singular purpose, carrying and delivering a child. The power dynamic has flipped, and Serena, once the enforcer of these rigid rules, is now the one being controlled. As her defiance grows, Mrs. Wheeler asserts her dominance even further, going so far as to order Serena to her room like a child. Back in Gilead, we learn that Esther is pregnant and has now awoken from her coma. When Aunt Lydia speaks with her, she realizes Esther was raped by Commander Putnam. Aunt Lydia apologizes, but Esther calls her out, saying that she knows this happens all the time, and Aunt Lydia isn't truly sorry. After leaving the hospital, Aunt Lydia confronts Lawrence about the rape, only for him to dismiss her concerns. Since Esther was impregnated just a day before being officially posted to Putnam, Lawrence sees no issue. This moment pushes Aunt Lydia closer to realizing the full scope of Gilead's injustices. Later, Lawrence, Putnam, and Nick share a drink in celebration of the Putnams' impending child. Lawrence quips, "You're going to single-handedly repopulate the planet." Serena is called to meet Mr. Wheeler in his office, and to her surprise, it's not because of her previous conversation with Mrs. Wheeler. Mr. Wheeler informs her that June has been captured, and that he intends to handle her personally. He doesn't trust Gilead to do what's necessary. Serena asks if she can accompany Ezra to see it through, claiming she needs to witness June's end. Mr. Wheeler agrees. Back in captivity, guards take June's fingerprints and inform her that she and Luke are being sent to Gilead. When Luke's turn comes, he fights back, prompting the guards to beat him, leaving him bloodied and battered in his cell. When he wakes up, he and June have a conversation, with Luke saying his goodbyes, convinced they will be executed. They are soon to be pulled from their cells and separated. Luke is sent back towards the border, while June, seemingly bound for Gilead, is loaded onto a bus with other captives. However, as we viewers know, she is actually being taken to meet Ezra and Serena. Meanwhile, at breakfast, Commander Putnam is suddenly dragged away outside a restaurant. Nick executes him with a gunshot in front of the other commanders and his wife. Putnam is declared guilty of apostasy, sins of the flesh, for raping unassigned property. His body is later displayed on the wall. This both removes an obstacle for Commander Lawrence and appeases Aunt Lydia. Aunt Lydia takes the handmaids to see Putnam's body hanging, and Janine remarks that she wishes that she could have witnessed the execution. Back home, Nick finds Rose visibly shaken by what has happened. She questions what kind of person this act makes him. Nick insists he's just trying to make Gilead a safer place for their child. Rose pointedly asks if he's sure that's really why he did it. It is also here that we find out that Rose is pregnant. Back on the road in no man's land, the bus carrying June is stopped. Ezra removes her, and as the bus continues on, she comes face to face with Serena. Seeing her, June exclaims, "Are you fucking serious?" They have an intense confrontation about what's happening. Serena orders Ezra to cut June's bindings, insisting that she wants to see her pray before she dies. As Ezra holds June at gunpoint, Serena demands that June kneel. June tells Serena not to do it, to which Serena commands her to pray. We see June deliver a powerful prayer. "I pray for our children. I pray that my daughters live a life of peace, a life without all of this hate and violence. Give them a life. Give them a happy life, and dear God, may they do better than we did." Serena says amen, and then in a shocking turn of events, shoots Ezra. However, his bulletproof vest saves him. Clearly in distress, likely from labor pains, Serena orders June to get in the car and drive, keeping the gun pointed at her from the back seat. And this is how we end episode 6. In the beginning of episode 7, June is still trying to piece everything together, demanding answers from Serena, who is very clearly in labor. In the chaos, Serena accidentally fires a shot. June stops the car and bolts into the woods. Serena attempts to follow her, but she loses control of the car and crashes into a ditch. When June circles back, she finds Serena still clutching the gun, breathing heavily. June looks at Serena and says, "Are you in fucking labor?" And without hesitation, June yanks the gun away. They both know there's no way out of this now. Serena is having this baby, and June is the only one who can help her. Realizing they have no phones and no way to call for help, June scans the area and spots a barn in the distance. As they walk, June jokes, maybe they'll have a manger, and helps Serena make her way inside. The scene cuts to a flashback. June and Serena at a Gilead birthing ceremony for of Clarence, standing among the crowd, watching the bizarre spectacle unfold. A silent exchange between them, a shared glance, a roll of the eyes, suggests for a brief moment that they both recognize the absurdity of it all. Later in the memory, the reality of Gilead's brutality sets in, as the handmaid giving birth is hidden behind a curtain. The baby is surgically removed. Of Clarence does not survive. The child, however, does. Back in the barn, June does what she can to comfort Serena. But the contractions are relentless, and Serena is losing control. She lashes out, accusing June of trying to kill her baby. June has had enough. Without a word, she walks off to try and free the car from the ditch. But nothing works. The car is stuck, just like they are. When she returns, Serena looks up at her in shock. She expected June to abandon her. Instead, she finds her kneeling beside her, ready to help. In an intense, almost intimate moment, June helps Serena through labor, guiding her, steadying her, and then Noah is here. His cries fill the barn, as both women dissolve into relieved sobs. Serena, exhausted and overwhelmed, asks if he's okay. "He's perfect," June whispers, cradling him before adding in a voice so soft it almost disappears, "Praise be." Later, as Serena nurses Noah, she finally asks June the question that's been haunting her. "Why didn't you kill me when you had the chance at the information center?" June takes a long moment before answering, "I didn't want to," while tearing up. The conversation turns to Noah's future. Serena fears that Fred's cruelty is woven in his DNA, that he's destined to become his father. But June pushes back, telling her that upbringing matters more than genetics, that Noah is not Fred, and he never has to be. Always focused on the next move, June is ready to get Serena and Noah somewhere safe. But Serena refuses. She has nowhere to go. She can't return to Canada or Gilead. And then the realization hits her with full force. I'm their handmaid. It's like I'm you. June doesn't argue. She doesn't need to. Serena is finally seeing it for herself. In desperation, she suggests something unthinkable, letting June and Luke raise Noah instead. Serena tells June, he would be safe with you. Luke is a good man, someone who would never do the things his father did, the things that I did. She even frames it as divine will. Maybe she was just the vessel and June was meant to raise him. And then in a moment unlike any before, Serena apologizes. But for June, it's too late. Instead of accepting the apology, she gives Serena the truth. This isn't Gilead, and I'm not you. She refuses to take Serena's child, but she does promise to keep them together. You're his mother, and he belongs with you. That's God's will. We get another variation of an iconic line from June. Do you understand me? But this time, softer. And now with them both seemingly on the same page. This was such a touching scene between the two of them, and it really shows their bond, their trauma bond. The next time we see them, Serena is being wheeled into a Toronto hospital, with Noah in her arms. June reassures her that everything will be fine. Later, when June visits, Serena is overwhelmed that Noah is now in the NICU. She exclaims the doctors are using antibiotics formula, and it all feels so unnatural, so against everything she was taught in Gilead. Once again, June grounds her, offering comfort. Serena states she just wants to go home, to which June states, there is no home, Serena, there is just wherever you are, to which Serena says no man's land. She extends a hand and thanks June. June hesitantly takes her hand and walks out the door. Out in the waiting room, Luke arrives, and he tells June that he handed Tuello the information on the wife's school, and that Tuello is working on it. June explains what is going on with Serena and her baby. She also tells him that she's fine and the baby is fine. Luke is clearly confused as to why June cares so much about Serena. It is during this conversation that we see immigration officers arriving, asking for Serena. This is when we find out Luke has called immigration on Serena. Within minutes, we see officers arrive in Serena's room. Serena watches in horror as they inform her that as an undocumented person, she has no legal rights. The cuffs snap around her wrist, chaining her to the hospital bed as they tell her they are going to be taking Noah. June and Luke watch from the hallway. Serena's screams cut through the air. June, don't let them take my baby. Please help me. Luke looks on, his expression shifting between satisfaction and doubt. At last, she knows what it feels like, he says. June, however, is silent. As Serena thrashes against the restraints, her cries growing more desperate, June barely manages to whisper her response. Right. She is clearly conflicted. And this is how we end Episode 7. Episode 8 begins with Serena now locked up in an immigration detention center in Toronto, separated from baby Noah. Desperate, she keeps calling June for help. Luke claims he doesn't understand why she keeps calling June or deserves her help, to which June states it had nothing to do with her, she just didn't think her baby deserved to die in the woods. June and Luke have their own problems. Anti-refugee protesters are making their lives miserable, protesting outside their home. Meanwhile, Commander Lawrence is unveiling his latest plan, New Bethlehem. It's supposed to be a reformed, more welcoming version of Gilead, offering amnesty to refugees and a chance for families to reunite. He pitches the idea to Gilead's leaders, and while some are skeptical, Nick backs him up. They sell it as a smart political move. In Canada, we find Serena in a yellow jumpsuit, awkwardly pumping breast milk in the detention center's communal area. Mrs. Wheeler arrives to collect the milk, and it's clear Serena is desperate to prove she's capable of caring for her son. However, Mrs. Wheeler, who now has Noah, doesn't seem all that thrilled about it, complaining that he is turning the house upside down. She mentions that they're letting Noah cry it out, a method Serena finds harsh and unnecessary. In a tone dripping with condescension, Mrs. Wheeler reminds Serena of her position, locked up in a detention center, and essentially tells her, as of right now, she's not fit to be a mother. We see Luke, June, and Moira cleaning Americans Go Home that has been spray painted on the sidewalk. While scrubbing away the graffiti, an act June compares to cleaning Gilead's bloodstains. Luke brings up the idea of relocating somewhere friendlier, maybe Alaska or Europe. But June immediately shuts that down. Moving away means being even further away from Hannah, and that is not an option. Lawrence takes his new Bethlehem pitch to Toronto. He meets June, offering her a chance to return to a kinder, gentler version of Gilead. One with no handmaids and no hangings. He even goes as far as saying he can put Hannah in New Bethlehem, so they will be together again. But while June is tempted, Luke isn't buying it. He doesn't trust Lawrence and refuses to bring their family back to Gilead. June points out that Tuello and the Americans are not helping, and they have done nothing to assist. June calls Lawrence her friend and points out how much he has helped her and all the good he has done. Luke blows up, saying he doesn't understand why she keeps forgiving these people. He brings up Serena and says he hates what they have done to June and their family. He tells June she is letting her emotions cloud her judgment. To which June tells him, "Of course you don't understand how I feel. Look what you did to Serena and her baby." He says, "I did that for you." And she responds, "I never asked you to do that." He asks her to let him protect her, and she replies, "I don't need your protection. Hannah does." For Luke, it's hard to reconcile June's ability to extend empathy or forgiveness towards them, especially when the pain they've caused runs so deep. He struggles to see them as anything but enemies, making his emotional response to their actions feel almost black and white. However, June's perspective is different, and this speaks to her complex relationship with Serena and Lawrence. June's empathy towards Serena can be seen as a reflection of her own trauma and a psychological defense mechanism. June recognizes Serena's vulnerability as a mother, and the psychological bond of shared motherhood may influence her ability to see Serena as more than just a villain. June likely sees parts of herself in Serena. Both women are victims of a brutal system, even though their roles in it are vastly different. In some ways, June may sympathize with Serena's desperate attempts to hold on to motherhood, despite the fact that she played a role in stripping June of her own child. Luke's plea for protection is rooted in his deep love for June, but also in his need to feel in control and able to shield her from the harms of the world. June's response highlights the emotional divide between them. She doesn't want to be protected, she just wants to be in control of her own fate, and her primary concern is not herself but Hannah. This moment reveals the growing tension between their differing priorities. Luke's desire to safeguard his wife and June's unyielding determination to save her daughter. Still in Canada, Lawrence also meets with Serena, but her offer is much less appealing. He suggests she go back to the Wheelers, not as Noah's rightful mother, but as essentially a handmaid in everything but the name. She refuses. We see Serena in another predicament, where she is being placed in the position of a handmaid. During this conversation, Serena says, "I'm not gonna live in the same house as my child's kidnappers." To which Lawrence responds, "Do you have an irony deficiency?" Serena retorts, "I don't give a damn. I'm not a handmaid." A bit of a side note, I saw an interview where Bradley Whitford said that he came up with that line, and honestly, it's just such a good line. We are starting to see June seriously consider Lawrence's offer, but Tuello tries to talk her out of it, claiming the US is planning a major military operation against Gilead. He's vague on the details though, and has no real updates on Hannah. Frustrated, June turns to Rita, who tells her that while she'd never willingly return to Gilead, she'd do anything to be reunited with her child. Later in the episode, June visits Serena to set the record straight. Serena begs for help, but June reminds her in no uncertain terms, they are not friends. Serena exclaims, "But you forgave me," and June says, "I could never forgive you." Whatever connections Serena thinks they have, it doesn't erase the trauma that she inflicted. June delivers a few lines, one being, "I turn the other cheek," and another being, "I guess I'm a better Christian than you." We see Serena ask, "How do you go and live in a house with a woman who is trying to steal your baby?" June cocks her head. "Are you seriously asking me that?" June, however, offers some practical advice rooted in her own survival of Gilead. Pretend to be a handmaid. Play the game. Pretend to be obedient. Gain their trust, and find a way to fight back from the inside. It's the same strategy that helped June survive in Gilead. As June leaves, Serena asks, "What would you do if you were me?" June says, "You cannot help your child if you're not with them. I would go back." We see the realization on June's face as these words leave her mouth, that she needs to take her own advice. June decides to test Lawrence one last time. She tells him she'll go to New Bethlehem if he guarantees Hannah won't be forced into marriage. But Lawrence won't promise that. Instead, he says Gilead is gonna Gilead, which sends June into a rage. He finally admits that his grand vision for Gilead has turned rotten, and that if he could, he'd undo it all. Now he's begging June to help him fix what's left. He shares that his push for New Bethlehem is not just a political move, it's a desperate attempt to salvage whatever's left and make a better life for the future generations in Gilead. He reassures her that while Hannah will still have an arranged marriage, Nicole won't face the same fate. June is left grappling with the weight of his words, uncertain of whether he's truly changed or just playing a dangerous game. That night, June receives an anonymous package containing footage of Hannah at her school. Seeing her daughter again stirs up guilt and reinforces her decision that she has to go back and save her. Luke is devastated but remains adamant that he won't take June and Nicole to Gilead. After a heated argument, June finally lets out her true feelings. She says, "What are you gonna do? Just keep doing the same thing you've done for the last 7 years? Nothing?" She quickly apologizes, but it's clear she's been holding those feelings inside for a long time. Luke, resigned to the fact that June isn't changing her mind, responds, "We're never going to be enough for you, are we?" June, torn with guilt, feels like she has abandoned Hannah, and it's evident once again that she won't rest until they are reunited. Meanwhile, Lawrence is making another play. He wants Nick to be the first commander to live in New Bethlehem, hoping it'll be a place where all of Nick's loved ones, June, Rose, their baby, and even Nicole, can eventually reunite. He's convinced June will come, bringing her whole family with her. Serena is now back at the Wheelers, struggling to play the part, but holding it together in hopes to get Noah back for good. Her and Noah are finally reunited. Now back with June, they suspect the video of Hannah might hold valuable metadata, so they hand it over to Tuello for analysis. Some time passes with no word. Frustrated, June steps out for a simple errand, buying apples for Nicole. While there, she gets a call from Tuello. "We found Hannah," he says, standing in a room full of military officials, and tells her that they are working on a plan to get her. Overwhelmed with emotion and rightfully distracted, June drops the apples, hugs the store clerk, and rushes home to tell Luke and Moira. They celebrate, finally feeling hope again. As the episode closes, we see Hannah working in the garden at her school, looking up at the sky. The second to last episode of Season 5 opens with June and Luke meeting with Agent Tuello in an aircraft hangar, where they get the details on the plan to rescue Hannah and 29 other girls from Gilead's wife prep school. 3 jets and paratroopers are set to cross the border into Colorado and extract the girls. June's understandably worried about the girls, especially Hannah, but the commander leading the mission reassures her. He says his goal is simple: get your daughter home and go back to mine. His calm confidence helps ease her fears, at least for the moment. Meanwhile, Serena is having a photo shoot with Noah at the Wheelers' home, preparing for the opening of Gilead's new fertility center in Toronto. When Serena suggests that it may be more effective for her and Noah to go in person, Mrs. Wheeler shuts it down, claiming there are too many germs for Noah. She also wants Serena to start pumping to bottle feed Noah again, which means even less time for Serena and Noah together. Adding insult to injury, Miss Wheeler refers to Noah as "my smart boy," a comment that visibly stirs Serena's anger. She restrains as she knows this is the only way to stay close to him. Back in Gilead, Commander Lawrence has an awkward conversation with Aunt Lydia and the newly widowed Naomi Putnam. Naomi begs them not to send her to the colonies, but Lawrence, almost amused, remarks that she deserves a reward for having put up with Putnam. He offers Naomi a strange proposal. He wants Naomi and the child to move in with him, effectively making it a marriage of convenience, especially considering he was the one who ordered her husband's execution. Naomi is initially relieved she is not being sent to the colonies, but she's clearly stunned by Lawrence's offer. Back at the Wheelers, we see Serena take a page straight from June's book, and she pays Mr. Wheeler a visit in his office. Clearly hoping to convince him to allow her to go to the new fertility center, he catches on quickly and basically tells her to get to the point. She asks, and he tells her that he will consider it. The tension builds as June and Luke join Tuello at the command center, watching live footage of the military jets on their way to Colorado. For a moment, we see Hannah at her school, quietly sneaking in a bit of rebellion by signing her artwork with her real name. It's a subtle act, but it shows she still carries a piece of her mother's spirit and remembers who she was pre-Gilead. June watches the mission unfold with hope, whispering to herself, "You're coming home." But when the jets cross the border, contact is lost, and soon alarms sound. The planes have been shot down by Gilead. There are no survivors. Later, Lawrence calls June, apologizing and expressing regret over the bloodshed, insisting this wasn't what he intended. He offers her another chance to relocate her family to New Bethlehem, where she could live with both Hannah and Nick, using Nick as a bargaining chip to lure her in. But June catches on, recognizing that Lawrence is dangling Nick in front of her as a manipulation tactic. He presses further, telling June that if she does agree to move, she'll have to publicly denounce America's rescue mission. June refuses, making it clear that she doesn't believe in his vision for Gilead. She even calls out the actions of his late wife Eleanor. The conversation takes a sharp turn as June tells Lawrence that Eleanor hated him, and when she saw her die, she did nothing. Their exchange ends with June telling Lawrence to go fuck himself. And after he tells her that Hannah will never be back in Canada, enraged, June hangs up. As Serena loads Noah into the car to head to the fertility center, Mrs. Wheeler slaps her twice across the face. Furious that Serena circumvented her by going to Mr. Wheeler for permission to attend the event, Mrs. Wheeler calls her a whore for visiting her husband in the middle of the night. Once again, Serena is facing the consequences of her own actions. Mrs. Wheeler also tells Serena she will now be going with them. Despite Mrs. Wheeler's disapproval, Serena still attends the event, receiving praises. Mrs. Wheeler is clearly irked and suggests that tomorrow she will bring Noah alone, and that she thinks it's time for Serena to go home and rest. However, Serena points out that she didn't pack a bottle for Noah, so she must nurse him before leaving. In a bold and desperate move, Serena grabs Noah and makes a run for it, escaping through an emergency exit and convincing a driver to take her away. Back with June, she is still reeling from her encounter with Lawrence, but she's far from ready to give up. She meets with Tuello to strategize their next steps, and Tuello informs June that he had offered Nick a chance to leave Gilead, but Nick refused. He offers June to set up a meeting between her and Nick, and June agrees. When they finally meet, June confronts Nick about rejecting the offer to come to Canada. Nick explains that he can't leave his new wife Rose, who is now pregnant and content in Gilead. He tells June that Gilead is changing and he and Lawrence are working to make it a better place. Nick admits it will be difficult for them to see each other, and June assures him that she doesn't want to cause him any more trouble. Despite their circumstances, they share a tender moment, exchanging words of love. Before they part ways, Nick sends his love to Nicole, and June silently reflects on what's ahead, seemingly happy that Nick is happy. Meanwhile, in Gilead, Nick's wife Rose is at the Lawrence home, with other wives, including Miss Putnam and Mrs. Mackenzie. They're discussing her pregnancy. One of the wives, whose name I do not know, comments on the possibility of Rose's baby inheriting her disability, creating an uncomfortable tension in the room. In the next scene, the commanders, including Nick, Lawrence, and Mackenzie, are celebrating Gilead's recent military success. As they discuss the state of their country, the conversation shifts to June and how they should deal with her. Lawrence tries to deflect attention away from the topic, but he's visibly uncomfortable when Mackenzie praises his leadership, making it clear that there are deeper tensions at play. The episode concludes in Toronto, where Tuello attends a vigil for those lost in the failed rescue mission. June, Luke, Moira, and Rita stand with the victims' families as a young girl, the daughter of the commander who had supported June, attempts to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. The girl is struggling, so June offers to join in, but as she does, an anti-refugee protester disrupts the moment. And just as a group nears the end of the pledge, gunshots ring out. The crowd scrambles for cover, with June shielding the young girl, narrowly escaping the bullets. The final episode opens with June kneeling in the garden, her hands digging into the dirt over a patch that eerily resembles a large grave. As she silently works, a package arrives, containing a bulletproof vest. With another memorial service on her calendar, she's prepared. Luke expresses his anger at the world they live in, the fact that this is what it's come to in order for her to feel safe. Back in Gilead, we see Nick interrupt Commander Lawrence to inform him of the shooting in Toronto. Nick makes it clear that June must not become a target. Lawrence basically states that this is what happens in war, and that she had a million chances to avoid this. From this conversation, Nick knows he will now need to take matters into his own hands to protect June, as Gilead is clearly not done with her, and won't be until she's dead. Meanwhile at the Red Center, we see Janine and the other handmaids lighten the mood by singing "It's a Hard Knock Life" while scrubbing the floor. Before interrupting, we see a smile hit Aunt Lydia's face, who surprisingly lets the misbehavior slide. However, the joy is short-lived, as one of the other aunts reminds Aunt Lydia that Janine is needing to be reposted, as other people are starting to talk. Aunt Lydia decides to suggest to Naomi, who is soon to be Lawrence's wife, that she take Janine in as her handmaid. Naomi isn't thrilled by the idea given Janine's past, but agrees to consider it. Lydia also presents the arrangement to Janine, hinting that it would allow her to live under the same roof as her daughter Angela. Janine, clearly unhappy about being reposted, reluctantly agrees as she realizes she doesn't really have any other choice. Back in Canada, June finds herself enjoying a rare peaceful moment with a cup of coffee when Agent Tuello arrives with some news that the shooter from the memorial has been apprehended. After the conversation, June walks Tuello to his car, and on the walk back, June is run down by a pickup truck, bearing a Gilead bumper sticker. The truck reverses, breaking June's arm, and attempts to run her over a second time before Luke intervenes, dragging the attacker from the truck and beating the driver. June is taken to the hospital, visibly in pain, while an officer arrives to take Luke into custody, seemingly for his role in attacking June's assailant. Shortly after, Nick crosses into Canada to meet with Tuello, who takes him to the hospital to see June. Nick tells Tuello it's probably best if she doesn't know he was there. Tuello steps aside, allowing Nick a moment alone with her. As June remains unconscious, he sits with her briefly, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead before quietly leaving. Afterward, Tuello asks Nick to sign a contract, agreeing to work with the US government in exchange for their protection of June. Nick insists that Gilead wants her to suffer, and stresses the importance of keeping her safe. This is clearly his driving factor and shows how much he still cares for June. We see Tuello insinuating Nick could have run away with her, and clearly wondering why he didn't, to which Nick says she has people that care, and he is nothing. Nick seemingly carries immense guilt for his role in Gilead's rise and doesn't see himself as worthy of redemption or a future with June. Despite his efforts to protect her from afar, he believes he is beyond salvation, trapped in the world he helped create. Back at the Lawrence household, Naomi establishes strict boundaries for Janine, making it clear that Angela is her daughter. She warns that any step out of line will be considered heresy and could cost Janine her tongue. After the meeting, Janine speaks privately with Martha, who informs her about the recent attempt on June's life, igniting a surge of anger within her. Later, Naomi attempts to soften towards Janine, expressing hope and even calling her of Joseph. However, the news of June's ordeal has shattered any patience Janine had left, and being called of Joseph sets her off. Without hesitation, she bluntly tells Naomi, "We're not friends." Then with simmering anger, she continues, "I think you're one of the worst people I've ever known. I am not your friend. I hate you, Naomi. How can you not know that?" Back in Toronto, June and Luke are informed that the attacker didn't survive his injuries. June realizes Canada may not look favorably on Luke, a refugee killing one of its citizens. Fearing for their safety, June decides they can't afford to wait. They have to run. She tells Luke, "I lost you. Then we lost Hannah. We cannot help her if we're dead. It's changing, Luke. This country is changing." When Luke insists that Canada isn't Gilead, June pushes back. America wasn't Gilead until it was, and then it was too late. "Luke, we have to go. We have to run now." They book flights to Hawaii, but Tuello intercepts them with a warning. There's a heavy police presence at the airport waiting to arrest them. Instead, he suggests they take the train out west with the other American refugees. Back at the Lawrence household, Nick storms in, passing his wife Rose to confront Commander Lawrence. "You could have fucking killed her," Nick yells. But Lawrence protests, claiming it wasn't his decision. After a tense exchange, Nick storms out. Punishment is also dealt out at the Red Center. Aunt Lydia reprimands Janine for her outbursts towards Mrs. Putnam. But it's clear she deeply cares for Janine and fears for her safety. Before they can continue their conversation, a pair of eyes arrive on Lawrence's orders to apprehend Janine. They bind her hands, gag her, and force her into a van, ignoring Lydia's desperate protests, even knocking Aunt Lydia to the ground. Inside the vehicle, Janine tries to comfort another gagged Martha, sharing a silent moment of solidarity in their grim fate. As the episode comes to a close, we see Tuello drops June, Luke, and Nicole off at the train station. Before they part ways, June asks Tuello to let Nick know they're safe. As they enter the chaotic crowd of refugees trying to flee Canada, police officers are checking paperwork, and some are specifically searching for Luke. Luke urges June to leave him behind and take Nicole on the train to safety. As she boards, June receives a tearful call from Luke. Over the phone, he tells her to get on the train, while she responds with a heartfelt "Come find me, I love you." Reluctantly, June boards the train, watching through the window as Luke surrenders to the authorities and is immediately arrested. June is once again alone. Nick isn't faring much better. In a Gilead holding cell, his pregnant wife Rose confronts him, accusing him of pretending to love her while still holding on to June. Nick insists he loves her, but Rose cuts him off, telling him he's just saying that to feel like a good man. She points out, a good man wouldn't leave his pregnant wife every time his girlfriend calls. Nick admits he tried to let her go, but he couldn't. And Rose, heartbroken, tells him she doesn't want to be with him anymore. She walks away adding, "We had a good thing, and then you had to go and ruin it." Back inside the train, June attempts to find a seat and comforts Nicole. As she settles, the sound of another crying baby catches her attention. The woman holding the fussy infant turns toward her. It's Serena, holding Noah. The two women lock eyes, stunned. After a tense silence, Serena forces a smile and greets June with a simple, "Hi, June." June, still in disbelief, replies, "Hi, Serena." The two stare at each other, their emotions and history hanging heavily between them, before Serena asks, "You got a diaper?" June raises an eyebrow, offering a half smile. The scene closes with them continuing to stare at each other, the weight of their shared past lingering, and this brings us to the end of season 5. Alright, so usually this is a point where I would go over some real world parallels, but I thought it would be fun to go over some fan theories for season 6. So I will read those, and then I will read my theory for season 6. I'm gonna apologize in advance because a lot of these names are like TikTok names or Reddit names, and I will probably not pronounce it correctly. The first one comes from Reddit. Athencia, I think is the name, and they say, "I think we'll see more of Gilead influencing Canada. The ideas that caused Gilead to happen are already spreading up there. Serena's fans seem like only the tip of the iceberg. I can see Nick running New Bethlehem. I can also see him taking Tuello's deal, but he'd have to have a big falling out with Rose. I can also see him doing something to get Luke out of jail. Divorce isn't a thing, so even if him and Rose break up because of his feelings for June, I'm not sure what they could do with their marriage under Gilead law. I can see Nick wanting to leave the country. Nicole is gonna be gone. In the trailer, it looks like June is going back to Gilead, and Luke got arrested, so who's going to take care of her? Maybe Moira? Also, kind of off topic, but Nicole's age is a plot hole. While she's still a baby on screen, she is getting old enough to be influenced by her mom being a bloodthirsty killer. I can see the adults in her life wanting to remove her from that. It looks like they also included a Testaments book spoiler, so if you don't want to hear that, I would skip ahead probably like 15 seconds. So Testaments book spoiler. In the Testaments, we learn that she grew up with adoptive parents. I imagine that could be Moira, but it could also be strangers we didn't meet yet. Hannah/Agnes is being indoctrinated. I know we saw her writing her name, but I think she may be more influenced by Gilead now. I can see her getting an opportunity to leave Gilead and not wanting to. I wonder who Serena will marry. She can't stay single, and it looks like her wedding in the trailer. I see her marrying someone we don't know yet, given Lawrence is taken. I can see a small possibility that she marries Nick, but highly unlikely given Gilead's divorce laws and how much Nick hates her. I think there's a small chance she could cut a deal with him that would make marrying her appealing. I just remembered too, there was a foreshadowing on Nick. When he was in the jail cell after punching Lawrence, the light coming in showed up in the pattern of an American flag. I feel like that points to him taking Tuella's deal. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Those are some good points. So the next one also comes from Reddit. It's Diabetic Beau. I think that's how you say it. I have one theory about the wedding, that it is a setup by June and trying to redeem herself, Serena, that either fails or something prevents it from happening. Also, as much as this hurts my soul, Janine died, and that's the straw that breaks the camel's back for Aunt Lydia. I think some of those theories that you pointed out are definitely theories that I have also come to, so thanks for sharing your thoughts. Next one is also from Reddit. I have a few from Reddit, but this one is Pt.2, and they say, "It's a horrible feeling to have, but I think Serena will die at the hands of her new husband, unceremoniously. She's created a world where men have dominion over women and pays the price of that culture. I think she would expect a martyr's death, being killed by the enemy, and probably dies quietly and gets dumped somewhere and nobody remembers her." That is a very interesting one as well. Not something that I've quite thought of. So thanks for sharing that. Tall Guy 1975, a very in-depth one. June will die. Once again, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate anybody sharing any thoughts. So, all right, our next and last one from Reddit comes from Sad Hermit Girl. Haven't seen the trailer yet, so my big current idea is that the train isn't taking them to Hawaii. There's been some kind of deal struck, or an ambush on the train, that they're going to all end up in New Bethlehem, but it's probably not as free as advertised. Something is going to happen to Lawrence. The other commanders push him aside, or worse. Because they see him going soft, and have all agreed separately from him what will really happen with this project of his. Serena and or June are going to be singled out and taken away from the rest of the refugees and have more plot stuff happen with them. There will be at least one death of a beloved character. Probably Janine, maybe June or Serena. Maybe all of them die. But there's gotta be at least one death that shakes us to tears. Thanks for sharing that. And then I have two very short ones from TikTok before I share mine. Gabby from TikTok says, "The train delivers them to New Bethlehem. Canada made a deal." So that one is pretty similar to Sad Hermit Girl's theory. So it seems like a lot of people kind of have that thought. Holly on TikTok says, "Serena will get what's coming to her, but it won't be anything from June." So that's another common thing I'm seeing. People are saying that, Serena's finally going to get what's coming to her. But I guess we'll see. So once again, thank you all for, sending in and interacting with my posts. Like, it's so exciting for me to see people, even just sharing a few words. So thanks for that. Alright, so now I'm going to share my theories for Season 6. Full disclaimer, I have not read the Testaments yet. I did buy the book, but I'm waiting to read until after this season. I have seen some spoilers, but I'm trying not to let that influence my predictions. My predictions are going to be off of things I've seen, just context clues and the trailer and then some other teasers we've been getting. After the Jimmy Kimmel teaser, it's clear something major happened on the train. We ended Season 5 here, so we are going to start Season 6 here as well. June is once again helping Serena, who desperately needs to jump off the train to escape the mob of angry people. And we see them trying to break through the train doors to get to her. That's all from the Jimmy Kimmel teaser. It's evident that Serena has been recognized and she is no longer safe, with the mob's hostility mounting as they pursue her. I believe June stays on the train because we get a shot of her and Nicole arriving in what seems to be Hawaii or maybe Alaska. I'm bad with geography, but she's made it somewhere. And we do not see Serena in the shot. I don't think Serena would have been welcome there given what happened on the train anyways. So I think after Serena jumps off the train with no other choice, she returns to Gilead, though this time she'll be in New Bethlehem with her new husband. So she gets remarried and is trying to play the part, but I believe her time with the Wheelers last season really pushed her to be more anti-Gilead than ever. That said, I do think she's in the middle of her redemption arc. However, I suspect she'll be secretly working to help June and might finally make a real effort to be a good person, especially after everything June has done for her. Now, this is what I hope, but with Serena's track record, who really knows? Nick ended Season 5 locked up, but we see him out in the new trailer, so my guess is Lawrence either lets him go or helps him get out. And he is now going to be playing both sides to try and help keep June safe and also help the rebellion. I think him and Rose do reunite to some extent to play the part of a happy family, but as we saw in the trailer, we do get a June and Nick reunion. So who knows how long that will last or what's going on with, the Rose and Nick relationship. Luke and June reunite, and Luke has joined the fight with Mayday. I believe that after his arrest, he was found not guilty, and once he is released, he goes to find June. Once he does, he helps Mayday, June, Tuella, Moira, and Rita come up with a plan, with June once again leading the fight. As we have seen, Americans are seemingly no longer welcome in Canada, and are facing hostility. Because of this, I believe Moira, Rita, and Tuello also join June and Luke in either Alaska or Hawaii, wherever they are. I am not sure where they leave Nicole when they go to fight, but I've seen some speculation that she stays with Moira. However, based on the trailer, we see June and Moira walking with the handmaids in front of the Red Center. We also see June and her mother seemingly kneeling in front of a memorial. It's unclear if this is a flashback yet, but if it isn't, they may have left Nicole with her. As we know, they all somehow stealthily sneak inside Gilead or back into Gilead and manage to fly under the radar to get the revolution going. I think Nick plays a huge role in this, while Lawrence is definitely no longer willing to help. A key indicator of that is a little scene we get in the trailer of Lawrence, I guess maybe June, stepping in front of Lawrence's car and him basically being like, oh shit. So he is seemingly surprised by seeing her, which makes me think that he had no part in helping her get there. And then the last we saw Janine, she was picked up by the eyes. I believe she spends some time in confinement before meeting with Lawrence or Nick, who offers her some sort of deal to get her to Jezebel's to help June and the others infiltrate. My guess is Nick, as Lawrence seems to be leaning heavy on the Gilead juice. Or she could just be sent there in general because she has nowhere else to go. In the trailer, we see Aunt Lydia speaking with her, seemingly pleading for Janine to let her help her. I do unfortunately think Janine will die. At the end of last season, we saw a shift in Aunt Lydia, and that transformation continues this season. However, when it comes to June, things seem to be a little different, and she still has hate for June, because in the trailer, we see Aunt Lydia wielding a knife, yelling for June with the weapon in hand. I saw some speculation that the shot of the handmaids opening the knives were happening at Serena's wedding. I don't believe that happens at Serena's wedding. The reason being is we get a shot of her being carried by her new husband into their house, and she just looks extremely happy in that shot. If something were to have gone wrong at her wedding, I don't think she would be that happy. We see a shot of the handmaids at a hanging, and in this scene, I'm 90% sure June is smack dab in the middle of the platform, and maybe Aunt Lydia is near her. I think this is where they start the revolution, as we get a shot of Luke in a sea of gray pulling a grenade pin, which is the same sea of gray we see at the hanging scene right in front of June and the whole, platform. I don't believe June dies, but I do believe others will. When we see Serena's house shaking in the trailer, that is also taking place during the same time that the hanging scene is happening, and I'm guessing she's feeling, the aftermath of the grenades and whatever bombs. Ultimately, I think we will feel satisfied seeing them finally fight back, but Gilead will still prevail in the end. With its growing influence in Canada, Gilead will likely extend its reach to the American refugee states, which are Hawaii and Alaska, taking control of those areas. I do believe June and Luke will escape back to Canada after the fight, but Moira and Rita will not. I just have a feeling we're going to lose a lot of key characters that we've come to love. So those are my theories on season 6. Whatever happens, I'm just excited to see it. You could probably hear it throughout this episode, but my voice is going out. I've been sick since last week and I'm still not fully better, so sorry in advance. The final episodes of The Handmaid's Tale Season 5 take us to the brink. Alliances shift, betrayals cut deep, and the battle for survival grows more desperate. As June and Serena navigate uncertain futures, we see the consequences of resistance, the cost of hope, and the weight of impossible choices. With Season 6 on the horizon, the theories are running wild. Will Gilead finally fall? What's next for June, Luke, and Serena? I'd love to hear your thoughts on episodes 6 through 10 and your predictions for season 6. Let's discuss it over on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Next week, April 8th, The Handmaid's Tale returns with a 3-episode premiere, and I'll be breaking it all down right here on Blessed Be the Breakdown next Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, rate, subscribe, and share. It helps the podcast reach more listeners. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and as always, blessed be the fight.